We have a very exciting Brisbane Property Podcast today with a special guest, Antonia Mercorella.
Antonia is joining us today in her capacity as ambassador for the Forgotten Women charity, and we're going to be talking about a very vulnerable population group in this episode. We'd love for you to get behind and support this charity. More details to come. We hope you enjoy this episode.
Welcome to the Brisbane Property Podcast with your hosts Melinda and Scott Jennison.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Brisbane Property Podcast with Scott and Melinda Jennison. And we've got a special guest today. We've got Antonia Mercorella from the REIQ, and it's a really exciting episode actually. And it's a touching one as well. So we'll dive into it in a little bit, but welcome, Antonia, and thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you. Always such a pleasure to join the both of you, and thanks for having me on. This is a special topic for me.
Absolutely. And look, we really appreciate you sharing your time with us, but also the time that you donate to causes like this. And when we're talking about the cause, this relates to homelessness in women, and we're going to be touching on all of the reasons why this matters to all of us, but why it also should matter to you. On the Brisbane Property Podcast, we always talk about property and homes and investment properties. This episode is specifically focused on people that don't have a home, and this is why it's very touching. And part of what we're going to be talking about is what difference can we make and how can we contribute to making a difference for those who don't have a home. And specifically, we're going to be talking about a demographic group who, in my opinion, are the most vulnerable, and that is women over the age of 55. So I'm really excited to be sharing a lot of this information with our listeners today and raising awareness for something that's deeply concerning within our community.
I will jump into our listeners and those people that do listen to this, and we'll give some more information later on in the episode and share some notes. But it would be awesome if people could jump on and support this charity as well. I think it's an amazing thing that is running, and we're all very, very lucky with what we've got and how we live. So I think if people could jump on, that would be an amazing thing to do. So, Antonia, can you tell me a little bit about the Forgotten Women? Why is it called this?
Yeah, it's a good starting question, actually. There's a reason we call them the Forgotten Women, and it is because they are women over the age of 55 who are either homeless or facing homelessness. And we say that they're forgotten because often these are the women who are silent. They don't want to complain. They don't want to be a burden on anyone. Often they are facing housing insecurity. They might be sleeping in their cars, or they might be couch surfing, going from home to home. Sometimes their families and friends aren't even aware. And we know that this demographic of women, they don't like to complain. And that's how the name has been, how that name arose, because they are often forgotten. And so we want to make sure that we're shining a light on them and making sure that they're not forgotten. And shockingly, and no matter how many times I say this, it always upsets me to say that it is the fastest growing demographic of homelessness in our nation, which is really, really shocking. You know, these are our mothers, our grandmothers, our sisters, our aunts, our friends, and it's I think homelessness for any gender is terrible, but I think in particular when we think of this group, they're the caregivers. They're often the ones who have spent a lifetime caring for others, and now they find themselves without anything in some instances. So I think we need to make sure that we're not leaving them behind.
Yeah.
Antonia, why do you think that this segment of the population, who are a very vulnerable population group, why is it that homelessness appears to be increasing in this segment of the population?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's interesting because when I present on this topic, you get two reactions. You get it's almost such a stunning revelation to a certain group of people, in particular younger women, but then older women immediately come up and say to me, I can completely see how this happens. So if we think about that demographic over 55, we know that there's a number of, I guess, factors at play. First of all, these are often women who don't have the benefit of large superannuation balances. Some of them don't have any superannuation. Some of them have very little. They haven't necessarily held full-time work. Again, we know that women in this demographic, they've often either been primary caregivers or they've been full-time parents. Or alternatively, they've worked, but they've not necessarily had professional careers, or they might have only worked part-time. So their superannuation balance can be quite minimal. So that's always an important one. Secondly, we also know, I hear from a lot of women who have been with a spouse and then they've broken up with that spouse and ended up with very little at the end of that separation. Or, of course, tragically, a number of our women have lost their partners. There's one really awful story about a woman who they were going around, traveling around Australia in their camper van, and they had a terrible accident. And he passed away. And it took nearly 2 years for the coroner to declare his death an accident. And so sometimes death, as a result of death, they end up. So there's all of those things. And then what we also know is that, again, it's just that, it might be that they're victims of domestic and family violence and they've fled from a dangerous situation with nothing. So there's not a one-size-fits-all reason, but certainly these are all the key factors that contribute to this demographic being particularly vulnerable.
Can I ask Antonia, and thanks for sharing all of that, because I think that it really highlights some of the complexities around this demographic or population group. How much do you think the current market environment has impacted on the current situation of homelessness in this group? And when I specifically talk about that question on the podcast each month here, we do a market update. We're constantly talking about affordability, not just for properties to purchase, but also for rental properties, for tenants actually finding shelter and accommodation. It's becoming less affordable for many demographic groups. Do you think that the market conditions have also been a contributing factor to the rise in homelessness in women over 55?
I can answer that question so easily, and it's absolutely unequivocally yes is the response. We know that many of our women have fallen out of either ownership or they just can't afford their rentals anymore. We all talk about that measure that generally we've all kind of grown up with, the 30% of your income, no more than 30% of your income ideally. And I just think when we look at what's happened in the rental market and how tight things have become and how rents have risen, that does mean that a number of our women have fallen out of, just can't afford their rental anymore. And indeed, one of the things that we try and focus on is tenancy sustainment, where we give them some money to help them subsidise so that they don't end up unable to afford that property. But we do know that many of them end up being unable to afford the rental property. We also know that sometimes what happens is you might have situations, again, these are all true stories. I wish I could say they were fictitious and I was just using them for effect, but they're 100% true. We know that in one case, one of our women was renting with her son, and they were in a co-tenancy relationship, and she thought she was giving him money for the rent, and it turned out that he was spending that money on other things, and they were evicted for non-payment. So there's those sorts of situations, and I think increasingly it's becoming really difficult for these women to find affordable rental properties. And of course, as we all know, we're in really tight vacancy rates. So they're also up against so many others who might have steady incomes, professional jobs. They might just be if you think about when you do a due diligence on a tenant, you've got this long list of people who want it, and so they're not always at the top of that list, unfortunately. And then of course we know that once you've fallen out of home ownership, it can be incredibly challenging re-entering the market where property prices have changed so significantly. I don't need to tell you both that. And so these are the sorts of factors that are leading to them becoming homeless.
How long, Antonia? Look, I've only become aware of this, obviously, because Melinda made me aware of this, and I didn't really know much about it probably a few years ago. How long has the Forgotten Woman been going for?
It's a good question. I think at least since 2022. That's certainly when we ran our first Live Like Her challenge. I'll tell you a story about how it came to be also in a moment. But just on that note, Scott, it's really interesting because the first time I ever became aware of this emerging problem was I heard a woman speaking about it at a superannuation conference, and it was probably 5 or 6 years ago. And I remember thinking, oh gosh, and it was through the lens of superannuation, but this woman was talking about the scale of it. And now I think it's become an increasingly prevalent issue in our society. And I feel like, obviously, I'm a Forgotten Women ambassador, but I feel like we're talking a lot more about it. We're hearing politicians talking a lot more about it. We're hearing about initiatives and programs that are designed specifically for this demographic. And a quick story, our founder, Teresa, who's an amazing woman and incredibly inspirational, she became aware of it and became kind of obsessed about helping these women. She was running or still runs, I believe, a business cutting hair, but predominantly a barber business. So really it was for men. And what she started to notice is that all these women with long hair were coming in and asking to have all of their locks chopped off. And she was seeing this growing trend and thought to herself, well, what's happening? And of course, that led to her discovering that, of course, if you're homeless and you don't have access to bathroom facilities necessarily, the last thing you want is long hair. And so they were chopping all their hair off, so they had something low maintenance, and that was kind of the impetus and the start of the Forgotten Women.
That's a fascinating story to think that, the insight that gave her into why is this happening. And then obviously she investigated further, and now she's created something to raise awareness of this problem, but not just raise awareness, but actually to make a difference. Can you help us understand a little bit more, Antonia, about your role with the foundation, but also what people are doing to get behind the foundation and how people can actually contribute and make a difference?
Yeah, I'd love to do that. So my role as an ambassador is, well, I'm probably demonstrating the role right here
now
today. So my role is really to, I guess, use the profile I have as the CEO of the Real Estate Peak body to talk about it. So one of the really important things is shining a light on the topic and getting the community talking about it and being aware of it. So that's a really big part of my role. But of course, money matters. We can talk about it, but we need to be acting, and to act, we need money to do that. So part of my role is to talk about ways that people can get involved, whether it be through donations and fundraising or this Live Like Her challenge, which we can talk about. And so really that's what it's about. And then and really trying to communicate, I guess, the significance and the difference that we can make to the lives of these women. Yeah.
So in terms of the Live Like Her challenge, obviously this is something that is an event that happens every single year. Scott and I are looking forward to joining Team REIQ this year and participating in this event. one of the reasons that we wanted to invite you onto our podcast to talk about the Forgotten Women and the Live Like Her challenge is to get some of our listeners behind this cause as well. We never ask for anything. We don't charge listeners. We don't advertise on our podcast. But today we're actually asking for help. We're actually asking our listeners to help this vulnerable population group. But can you give a little bit of an understanding to our listeners in terms of what's involved in the challenge and, what we're going to be up for on this night?
I'd love to. I'm going to put my glasses on so I don't mess this up, because actually this year for the first time we're running 2 challenges. So the Live Like Her challenge first started in 2022 and it was in Brisbane. So this year's Live Like Her challenge in Brisbane is happening. It starts at 3 p.m. on the 4th of September and it runs through to 5 a.m. on Friday, and that's happening at Brisbane Airport. But this year, for the first time, we're also running a Live Like Her challenge on the Gold Coast, and that's starting at the same time, 3 p.m. until 5 a.m. the next morning on the 11th of September at Robina Town Centre. And what we're trying to do this year is we keep raising the bar. We want to raise $500,000 in 2025. We are at just a little shy of 84,000. So we've got a way to go, but that's okay. And thus far, we have 271 individuals, 66 teams, and 204 cars to date. The way that it works is it's just under $50 to register to participate. And what we're asking you to do is just for one night, sleep in your car. And it's only for one night. And so you can imagine that at the beginning, there's lots of, you can go and sort of watch videos that people have posted on it. But you can imagine that at the start of the night, there's almost a little bit of a, dare I say, a sense of fun, a sense of community associated with it. But then you can imagine that as the night progresses, and it becomes dark and you get a little bit cold and you're sleeping really uncomfortably in your car, and you soon realize that it gets very hot in the car. There's not a lot of oxygen if all your windows are closed and your doors are closed, and then you're working out how to sleep comfortably. And that's when you're surrounded by potentially hundreds of other human beings, okay? And you've got to walk a distance to go to the toilet. And that's because you're lucky enough to have a toilet close by. And so what we're really trying to do is, to the extent that you can, replicate what it must be like to do that, but only for one night, and in the security of doing it with so many others. And, it's always, people are so moved by the experience. It's hard to talk about without getting emotional about it, because you suddenly understand the fear and the terror that these women must feel sleeping in a car. And if you're feeling a little bit fearful doing that with hundreds of people around you, imagine how you feel doing that
By yourself
in a dark alley, potentially without facilities. And so that's really what it's about. And obviously what it's also about is raising money. So we've got Team REIQ, and thank you both so much for registering to join. And we've got a bunch of other great real estate professionals who are going to get on board, and we had a great team last year as well. And I love the way that the real estate community is so philanthropic and so charitable. It's something that I feel really proud of about the people we represent. They are so community orientated. But I think for people that work in real estate, this is such an important issue, because we spend our lives talking about property and talking about its importance. And often it is through the lens of, it can be through a commercial lens, or it might be through the lens of we're buying shelter for our family. And I think this is such an important issue because, Melinda, you touched on it at the intro. We all know that shelter is fundamentally important to all of us. It's how we derive our sense of security and our identity, and it's how our kids are able to forge friendships and how we forge our relationships. And without stable housing, you really lose your sense of self and your place in the community. So I think it's I don't know that you get an issue that's more serious than this.
It's interesting the way that you described, and it's not until you stop and think, when you described about sleeping in a car, and I must admit, when we signed up, we went, oh, that could be fun.
Yeah.
So initially we thought, oh, that could be fun. We'll sleep in the car, and we've slept. It made me think when you were talking about it. Then Melinda and I, this was quite a few years ago now. We were up the coast, and Melinda's parents had a caravan, and our boys slept in the caravan, and we went, oh, we'll just go and sleep in the car. We didn't even last the night out because
we drove home.
It got so hot. We put the windows down. We put the windows down and mosquitoes came in.
Yeah.
We went, oh, we can't do that. We put the windows up. We put the air conditioning on, which we had air conditioning. But then after a while, with the car running, we thought, oh, no, that's not good. So we end up actually driving home. Now, that wasn't fun.
And that's just one night.
But when you start to describe it in a way of, okay, we were quite lucky because we had bedding and we had quite a lot of, we were pretty comfortable in our car, but it was still not comfortable. Toilets, as you just described, if you're in the middle of nowhere and you've got no one around you and you haven't got a toilet and you haven't got those comforts, all of a sudden it puts it into perspective of what that could actually be like. And it's not until you think about it, because as I said, we signed up thinking, oh, this could be fun, we'll go and raise some money. But then when you actually start to think about how people could live and how lucky we are in a house and that security.
That's right.
And the security is a big thing for people that are on their own.
I think we're all guilty of I think we forget how lucky we are, how fortunate we are. And, this is why this charity, this initiative is so important, because I think we're all guilty of that, wanting more or complaining that we don't have enough. And then you hear these stories and you just realise that these are women who don't have the most fundamental thing, and further to that, Scott. So there's that interesting, I guess there's the comfort issue is how I would characterize it, which is what you've just talked about, and that's before we talk about things like you can imagine. When you're sleeping in a car, the prospects of being assaulted, whether it's physically or sexually, are heightened considerably. And last year, when the Live Like Her challenge was on, I was an ambassador last year as well. I couldn't do the challenge because I was actually participating in a wedding, and I was involved in the wedding, and I felt very bad that I couldn't be involved. And we contemplated, for a minute, we kind of contemplated that I would run a bit of a separate challenge and go sleep in my car for one night on my own. And just as we were having that conversation about where I would go sleep, it started as, well, I'll sleep in front of my house. That makes the most sense. And then I felt like that was a bit of a cop-out and cheating, because I thought, well, that'll be too tempting to run inside to the bathroom or to go get a cuppa or to just check on the kids. And so I went, well, no, I can't just sleep in front of my house. I have to drive away and sleep elsewhere. And then I thought, I'll sleep at the REIQ car park. And then I thought, no, that's also cheating because it's quite secure. And then I started to think about where I would go sleep in terms of just down a side street. And then I actually started to panic at thinking about where I would go sleep on my own. And I was talking to my two sons about it, and they were like, oh, God, Mum, we don't want you sleeping in a car on your own in a random street.
No.
Would it be? And I thought, well, that is what we're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I think that story for me always is an important one. Yeah.
Well, look, we'll obviously be there sleeping out, sleeping rough for a night, but all in the interest of raising money. So for anyone that's tuning into the podcast, there is a link in the show notes where you can go and send a donation through to support the Forgotten Women charity, and as part of that, to support the Live Like Her challenge. Before we wrap up, Antonia, I'd love for you to share just some of the things that the Forgotten Women charity is able to do, like some of the contributions that the charity is able to make to really make a difference to some people's lives. Can you share some
I'd love
positive contributions that they're making?
Absolutely. So one of the most significant ways that we do contribute is through subsidising rent so that women can stay where they are.
Yeah.
Ideally, we want to stop them from becoming homeless in the first place. But I did want to share a recent success story that I'm particularly proud of.
Absolutely.
So this is, we've taken over a 27-room retirement facility. We've turned it into crisis accommodation. It reached full capacity in only 11 days.
Wow.
So that speaks volumes. But in particular, the average age of our residents at that particular accommodation facility is shockingly 71 years of age. So, and we're also constructing some new accommodation as well. Obviously, that's not cheap. And that takes time and it takes a lot of money. So this is why we try and focus our efforts on preventing people from becoming homeless, ideally. But also we've got to be able to come at it from a number of different angles. Yeah.
Well, you can also follow the journey, follow the night on the Streamline Property Buyers Instagram page. We will be sharing insights of what it is like to actually live like her in a car for a night. We're going to show the raw insights so people can get a better understanding, and all in the name of raising awareness for the Forgotten Women charity. So feel free to follow us on Instagram. That's just the handle Streamline Property Buyers, and you'll be able to follow the journey that Scott and I will take living like her in our car on the 4th of September.
4th of September.
Correct.
She jumped on the website just a little while ago, and it's livelikeherchallenge.com.au. As Melinda said, it'll go in the show notes. But I'd love to call out to all our listeners, the amount of people that come up to us on weekends and say, we love your podcast, we love listening to the podcast. I think if you love it that much, you might jump on and support us. And just jump on the Live Like Her Challenge website. You can find our names on there. You can search us up if you want. It's really easy.
Yeah.
And just jump on and donate anything. Just a small donation. That's all it is. Every little bit will count. But I'd love it if our listeners could support this and support the whole the foundation of the Forgotten Women.
Yeah, here. I would love that too. Thank you both so much.
Thank you so much for coming on. So jump on there. Well, as Melinda said, show notes will be on there. It's nice to jump on here and talk something else other than sort of property all the time. I think this is really important. So we're looking forward to it and to try and contribute and help through the charity as well. So I will let Melinda wrap things up as usual. From myself, thanks, Antonia, and to our listeners, thanks very much for listening. Take care and bye for now.
Yes, thank you for joining us once again on the podcast, Antonia. And I know the flavour, if you like, of this episode has been different to previous episodes where you've shared insights on the property market, but it's been a privilege to have you share insights on the charity that you're so passionate about. So thank you for your time once again.
Well, thank you both so much. And thank you to everyone watching and listening. And we really would love we'd love you to get involved if you can.
Look, you heard it from Antonia herself. We would love for you to support the Forgotten Women charity and the Live Like Her Challenge. All of the links that you need to make a donation will be in the show notes. We hope you have enjoyed this episode. It's been a different flavour today, but as always, please share this episode with friends and family. It's a very meaningful episode. You never know who may need the support of this charity in the future. It may be your mother, your sister, your auntie, someone that you know. So please support in any way that you can. As always, we hope you've enjoyed this episode. Please leave us a review on your favourite podcast player, and we look forward to speaking with you again next week. Until then, bye for now.